You better not shout, you better not cry. Konami doesn't care if you've been naughty or nice. Yu-Gi-Oh! Banlist season is here. What is going on, everyone? It is Cimo, and of course, it is that time of year once again. The ban list is here, and obviously, I have not been in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! In the slightest. Obviously, I still watch from the sidelines. However, we have to do it. It is the ban list reaction time, and so we're going to be doing it live. I'm a little bit late compared to everyone else because I was out and about having dinner with my wife's family, but we have it pulled up here. I'm excited to just see what the changes are. I have not seen anything yet, and so we're going to be doing it live just like always. So let's see what we got. I like that we're still doing the bits. I hope we keep doing this in the future because I think it's very exciting.
I hope that you all had a fantastic time.
Wow. I finally got a stable connection. Congratulations to our newest YCS winner, who also happens to be the final YCS winner of the current advanced format. The new advanced format starts on April 7th.
Okay, April 7th.
Forbidden
I will say, I want to say this. I much preferred the old, like, WWE style thing they did with the ban list last time. I give them props for trying something new, but I much preferred it, like, when they did it. I think that was way more fun. But maybe something will happen. Maybe I want to put that out there for now.
It's cards list right here. So, I've been trying to tell you all weekend about the new Forbidden Limited card list, and there's a lot to go over, so lock in. First, the following cards are now unlimited.
Oh, we're starting with the unlimits. Okay, I think I prefer that because, like, the bans, I think, are the thing that people want to see the most, but okay, I'm in.
Cyberjar.
Cyberjar, no one cares. Yeah, who cares? It's Cyberjar.
Danger Jackalope and Danger...
Okay. Jackalope and Tsuchinoko. Pretty good. I think we're past the point of, like, Dangers being, you know... I mean, it's hard to say. Dangers are really good cards, but, I mean, you know, they're kind of 2018, you know? So we'll see. I mean, they're cards that replace themselves and draw more cards. That's always fine. They're free material for a bunch of shit. Sure.
Danger Tsuchinoko.
Oh, this is cool that we have, like, the reaction to everyone, too, in the bottom corner.
Ava,
maybe this is... So obviously, like, you know, Drytron is why Ava's banned in the first place. Maybe because Drytron is getting more support. Like, is that why we're doing this? So we just have, like, more reason to play, like, Herald of Ultimate and some bullshit. But, like, I don't know. I don't... This is probably fine.
And Performapal
Monkey Board, it's so weird to think that, like, Monkey Board's unlimited now when that was, like, the face of pure evil incarnate not too long ago, but... Yeah, I think we're just, like, we're past that point. And also, Performapal is getting more support in the future, if I recall. So they want to help sell that, so that makes sense. What better way than to put one of the best Pendulum, you know, starter cards in the game at 3? Sure. Oh, good. Okay, so we're going to get a list here at the end. So maybe I'll wait till he goes through everything and I'll share my thoughts. Unless there's something crazy. But these unlimits, I feel like these are all pretty safe for what it's worth. Like, so whatever. Who cares?
Next, the following cards are now semi-limited.
Well, unfortunately, there's going to be a semi-limited list. For anyone who's new to the channel, I think the semi-limited list just shouldn't exist. I think it's like a complete waste. I think they could probably move everything on the semi-limited list to either 1 or 3, and it wouldn't affect anything. So hopefully there's only like 2 cards here.
There's a number of them moving in both directions. So let's start with the cards moving from limited.
That's a bad sign.
They are Black Dragon Collapse Serpent and White Dragon Wyverburster.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll wait to the end. Oh, I'll wait to the end.
Morphing Jar. Unchained Soul of Shrivara. Snake Eye Ash, and Snake Eye Poplar. The rest of the semi-limited cards were previously unlimited. And they...
This semi-limited list is fucking huge. What the fuck is going on?
They are X-Ryziel.
Ryziels.
Ice Ryziel. Sword Ryziel.
What?
Malice P. Dormouse. Malice P. White Rabbit. And Malice in Underground.
Okay. Obviously, I have a personal gripe with the semi-limited list, so let's try to break this down. First and foremost, Morphing Jar, who gives a fuck? That could go to 3 and that wouldn't matter. This is a really interesting approach that I don't know if we've seen Konami do before. So we're basically taking what are like the best decks at the moment, and we're like semi-limiting every single power card in those decks for the most part. Because we're hitting 3 Ryzeals, we're hitting 3 Malice, because of course we're hitting Underground too. Then bringing back Black Dragon and White Dragon, huge for like Dragon Link and shit. Shavara's huge for Unchained. Ash and Poplar going back to 2. I think that's like shocking. I'm kind of surprised they're doing that like so quickly, all things considered, because obviously people were so sick of Snake Eye. I'm kind of shocked. Granted, what's it called? Some of the stuff still hit, so like maybe it's fine. I actually don't know how to feel about this. It's really interesting that we're just hitting so much engine to semi-limited. Like typically, historically, right? Like Konami will do some dumb shit where they just like ban, or not ban, they'll semi-limit like 1 card in a deck, right? If they want a safe hit. And I don't know if we've, like, granted, there are still cards in these decks that are still at 3. So it's really interesting that we're hitting so much of the engine. Wow. I'm really like curious how this is going to impact things, because obviously these decks are still playable, but now we really hit like the recurability of a lot of them because their cards are semi-limited. Huh. I'm actually very curious to see how this is going to shake out, because I don't think we've really seen this before. And I could be wrong. If we've done this before, someone correct me in the comments, but this is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay, let's before we like jump to conclusions, there's still a limited list and a ban list, but this is this may be like some of the most, this is what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this is 12. I don't know if we've ever seen 12 cards get semi-limited in a single list. That's kind of crazy.
Next up, the limited cards. 3 cards have been moved from forbidden to limited. You may have seen a couple of these in the Quarter Century Stampede unboxings a couple days ago. And I would highly recommend that you go check those out.
Forbidden to limited.
This. The returning cards are Mathmech Circular.
Oh my god.
Brilliant Fusion.
Whoa!
Masterpiece. The true
this we knew. This was coming. That,
the rest of the newly limited
as
cards
unfortunate as it is.
Previously unlimited. And they are Bestial Druisworm, Ryzeal Detonator, Bonfire,
Okay.
Crossout Designator, Triple Tactics Talent,
Whoa!
Dimension Shifter.
Oh, of course he saved that for last. Okay, all right. Everyone's screaming in the background. So, lot to unpack here. I guess we'll start with the 3 that were banned, right? So Masterpiece we knew was coming. The OCG, I think recently, I figured it was OCG or Master Duel. I think they recently unbanned it. I think it's in Quarter Century Stampede. So like, why would they print it if it's not going to be legal, right? I hate Masterpiece. I just think it is like an awful card to exist in the game. I think Yu-Gi-Oh's at a point now where there's so many ways to like I'm thinking about this back in 2017, right? Where there was like, the game was a lot different 8 years ago. And so as much as I don't like Masterpiece just fundamentally from a card design perspective, like it being in the game now is probably fine because the game has just evolved so much that this is probably okay. This card's probably going to go to 3 or 2 on the next list and then eventually to unlimited. As annoying as that is, it's probably going to be fine. Brilliant Fusion. Spoiler, this comes up in one of the card review videos. I'm pretty sure it's the one that goes up like on Tuesday if you're watching this. So this is very funny because we talk about Brilliant Fusion and now it's limited again because we talked about it in the context of being banned. At 1 is very interesting. There are still ways to search it, but having only a singular copy is fascinating because obviously when it's like at a 3-to-1 ratio, that's a lot different than it being in a singular copy, but Brilliant Fusion is an extremely powerful card in and of itself. So I'm curious to see if people are going to cook. And then the third one was Circular. You know, everyone loves Circular, so we'll see. We'll see it going to 1. It being at 1 is a lot different than it being at 0, but we'll see. We'll see. And then everything else I think is a lot more interesting to discuss. Jerusalem going to 1, I think Jerusalem should have gone to 1 a while ago, personally. I think it's a very well-designed card, but I think it's a very powerful card, especially being at, like, multiple copies. So I actually think this being at 1, I'm pretty sure Magnumut's still at 1 too. I kind of like this. I think this is, like, probably for the better. Shifter, I'm going to say for last, because I have thoughts on Shifter. Detonator's interesting. Drident, this is like Drident in 2025, right? Drident was limited before it was banned, and you're able to recycle them, right? So, like, you can still play with this very powerful card, and now you just have to be mindful of the fact that you have to, like, get it back if you want to reuse it, which isn't hard, right? That's pretty easy for decks to do. So I would not be surprised if, like, this is, like, not really, it's a hit to Ryzeal, but it's, like, oh no, you know, they hit Drident to 1 and Zoo was still in everything because you still have a Drident, right? So it's going to be the same thing with Ryzeal. Like, right, even with everything semi-limited, you still have 1 Detonator. This is fine. This is fine. Bonfire getting limited, I think this was like a long time coming. I'm surprised it took this long, if I'm being honest, just because we know how powerful, like, Rotas are. And so the fact that this took, I want to say this should have probably gone to 1 on the last list, but whatever. Crossout Designator, I think a lot of people are very happy about that just because this is such a annoying and frustrating card to exist, especially considering, like, Call by the Grave is, like, also in the game, and that's, you know, I'm pretty sure still limited, so why the hell is this not there as well? I think that was also a long time coming, so happy to see that makes its way onto the list. Talents is interesting. I'm not exactly sure if people were, like, calling out for this card to get limited. Like, I understand Tactics is extremely powerful, but at the same time, it's also just, like, a really solid board breaker, but there's also plenty of other board breakers. But I guess if you're looking at, like, the power of all of these different types of board breakers, it's like, I mean, you could also use it, like, going first. So it's sort of like a crossout designator, like, in a way, but, you know, obviously has a lot more utility going second. I kind of see the argument for it. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, this is an interesting one. I think maybe it's healthy that this card is limited because it is so powerful. And having access to multiple copies is obviously insane, especially over the course of multiple turns. Like, that can be very swingy, but interesting. And then Dimension Shifter, like, this card, they should have just banned it, to be, like, quite frank. I don't know why they're putting it to 1. Because that, like, yes, it addresses the issue in a way, but now it's, so they did this with Maxi, I'm fairly certain too, where, like, Maxi was at a singular copy, or, like, Vanity's Emptiness was at a single copy, or all these other, like, oppressive cards in the game. They put them to 1 before they eventually made their way onto the ban list. And so while, yes, the consistency of Shifter goes down significantly because there's only a singular copy, so now the chance of your opponent having it in their opening starting hand is, like, what, like 14% or something like that. So it's like 1 in every 8 games they're going to have it versus, like, 1 in every 4. So that's pretty significant, right? However, it doesn't exactly, those 1 in 8 games your opponent opens Shifter, you're still going to be equally as frustrated that they opened it, right? And it's still, like, this very toxic card in that sense. And that was the same thing with Maxi. It was a very feels bad card if your opponent happened to have the 1 copy. Same thing for Vanity's Emptiness. Your opponent does a thing, and then they flip the 1 copy of Vanity's Emptiness. Oh, like, I got outskilled because they drew Vanity's Emptiness, right? So, like, I feel like Shifter falls into that category where eventually, like, probably the next list in, like, July or whenever it comes out, they're probably just going to ban this card because it's still just as frustrating because it's still legal in the game, right? And, like, obviously it's one of those weird cards where it's like it's like trying to, like, like, you can make the necessary evil argument, right? Because you know, you're trying to, like, stop the other decks from doing the OP thing, but straight up just blanket stopping the opponent from playing the game with a singular activation of a card, I don't think is healthy. And so cards like that should just go, but Konami seems to have this philosophy recently that they're, like, limiting all of these cards, and, like, either, you know, in anticipation of them getting banned, or they limit them first to see their impact, and then if it's still really bad, then they end up banning it, right? Like, we've seen this with the floodgates, like, all the different, like, continuous trap card floodgates that have moved to 1. Some have gotten banned, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we haven't gotten to the banned cards yet, but I kind of want to go off on a rant on Shifter because I think just, like, it's such an unhealthy card, and still being legal at 1, decks are still going to play it, and you're gonna just get extra pissed off if your opponent ends up opening it against you. It's weird though, because conversely, the more I'm thinking about it, it's weird because, like, since you're way less likely to open it, at the same time, then it becomes like this sort of brick in your deck if you don't open it, because it's a card that you can't have any cards in the graveyard in order to activate, where cards like Maxi and Vanity's Emptiness, since I've been, like, making the analog to those this entire time, those cards you can still use at any point if you draw them later on in the game, right? Like if you draw them turn 2 or 3 or 4, if the game goes that long, you can still use them, right? Where Shifter is probably not going to be online at that point and it's a dead card. But I guess at that point, it's a deck building decision that you say, okay, I'm going to play Shifter knowing that there's a very low likelihood I end up opening it in my hand, but the hands that I open it, it's like an auto win. I don't know if that's like, I don't think that's like a good argument for this card being at 1, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments as always. We haven't gotten to the bans. Like I'm talking about all this and I don't know what's banned yet. So interesting. I love how excited everyone
Finally,
is though.
There are 4 newly forbidden cards in the next advanced format. And they
Only 4. Okay.
are Nightmare Griffin,
Okay.
Link Decoder,
Okay.
Abyss Dweller,
Oh, thank God.
Bahamut Shark.
Okay. Okay. I think this is good, all things considered. So Griffin has been basically used for like degenerate purposes more often than not, especially because it can like set floodgates essentially, right? So I think for the better health of the God, it's so crazy the impact the Nightmares have had on the game, truly. I think for the better health of the game, it's probably good that Griffin goes, because if we remove more of those types of cards from the game that enable these like degenerate board states that you're able to like lock your opponent out of playing, that's probably for the best, right? And so Griffin enabling that, I think it's worth that it goes to the ban list. I think it's time, for sure. Link Decoder, okay, sure, like whatever. That seemed like people were like least excited about that. Bahamut Shark's interesting. This means that now decks that could make rank 4s to access Toad can no longer do so. So you have to like find different avenues or like play the native decks that like Toad is meant to be played in. So this is interesting because Toad has been hit historically. I think Toad is actually still banned in the OCG if my memory serves. It might be. I might have to check, but it might be. It's banned or at 1, but that's like I think one of the stark differences between our ban lists, if I recall. But anyway, hitting Bahamut Shark is an interesting choice because now it makes it so that decks can still play Toad, but it's only certain decks are allowed to still play Toad. And obviously, like this is sort of like an Atlantean hit, but it's interesting because Toad is like still extremely broken. But now if you're only allowed to play it in particular decks that might be lower power, or you have to go through different lines to get there, and you don't just get a free Bahamut, or you don't get a free Toad just for making a Bahamut Shark, right? That's interesting. It's like an interesting approach to tackle it while keeping Toad still in the game. Huh. Okay. And then Dweller. I have a lot to say about Dweller. I was expecting this. I'm pretty sure Dweller got banned on the last OCG ban list, or if it wasn't the last one, it was the one before that. Because they just had their actual ban list, I think, like a week ago. So it might have been the previous one prior to that. Dweller is definitely the symptom of like 2012 card design, where back in the day, it was printed and it was fine because Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a lot different back then. The games took multiple turns, and so dwellering someone for a turn, while powerful, wasn't necessarily like the end of the game. You still had ways to like out the dweller, which then would turn your stuff back on like the following turn and such. I think if we're going with this philosophy of trying to remove like all the non-interactive, especially lingering floodgate type effects from Yu-Gi-Oh!, Abyss Dweller needs to go on the ban list. And I think this is like one of the most egregious offenders that was still legal. And we have seen Abyss Dweller time and time and time again over the past several years. Right now, for instance, right? It's a very game determinative card. Look at tier format. Look at all the formats that Abyss Dweller, like the graveyard is second hand for so many different decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! That Dweller being a lingering floodgate that has very few cards that can actually interact with it is very frustrating to play against. And so, especially because it's in the extra deck and you can access it all times, like at least with the other floodgates, right? You know, whether it was stuff like Summon Limit or Vanities or whatever your floodgate of choice was, right? They had to go through hoops to get there, like Nightmare Griffin and such, whatever. Granted, it wasn't like that difficult, but it was a lot of extra steps than just slapping 2 4s over one another and summoning like an Abyss Dweller to make it that your opponent can't play the game, right? I think this was a long time coming. I think this is just a natural progression in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where like these older cards just need to make their way out of the game, to be honest. And so I'm happy to see it. I think this is going to be for the better of the game overall. And looking at this list, like, this is kind of a hype list in the extent that, like, there's a lot going on here. There's some pretty significant bans. When we go back to the limitations here, a lot of stuff happening here as well that is really interesting to see how that's going to shake things up. I think the semi-limits, as much as I hate to say it, interest me the most because I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. It scares me because if this works, Konami's going to be using the semi-limited list a lot more liberally in the future if this does well. And granted, I've always been a big hater of the semi-limited list because I think it doesn't serve a purpose. Maybe moving forward in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the semi-limited list will actually serve a greater purpose in this regard. And we'll have to see if that holds true. But if we're, like, reducing the amount of engine that these decks are able to access, I'm more just fascinated to see how this plays out more than anything else. I still think a lot of the decks that we are seeing currently are still the best decks. I don't think it changes that. But I think this allows for a lot of other decks to have a chance, right? Having a singular detonator that needs to be, like, constantly cycled or rotated while having a much more condensed Ryziel engine, it can still do all the crazy broken shit, but now you're limited on how much follow-up you have, especially if games go longer, right? Same thing with Malice. And so these decks are still going to be prominent in some of the best decks in the format. However, there are going to be some other contenders now that I think that we've sort of, like, toned the power level down a bit. I think this gives, like, rise for some of the other decks that have been on the peripheral of the format to really, like, show, not that, like, we haven't already seen stuff, right? Like, Memento just won the whole YCS, right? Like, we have Water doing really well. There's other decks that have been doing well, but representation-wise, it's just been dominated by, like, Ryziel and Malice. And so now, I actually think we're going to see those numbers tilt a little bit, and I'll happily be wrong here, but I'm interested to see how this plays out. And I think a lot of people have already been, like, enjoying this format. I think this is addressing several issues that a lot of people have had with the game, and I think it's going to move the game in a positive direction. There are still things that, like, I think people would like to see hit, like a lot of the other, you know, floodgate type effects that are still in the game. However, I think it's disingenuous to say that this is not a good list. I think this is actually pretty solid, and I'm really fascinated to see how well this plays out. So that's it for my reaction. I apologize that it's a bit long, but I had a lot to talk about because there's a lot of cards, and I think there's a lot of fascinating stuff going on here that I'm very curious, and this actually, like, gets me excited to watch more modern Yu-Gi-Oh! To see how these changes actually implement moving forward and affect the metagame. I think there's a lot going on here. And we're not going to really see the results of that until, you know, the next big set of tournaments come around. So thank you guys for watching as always. I know my insights are a bit limited considering I'm not, like, you know, deep in the format like I used to be competitively hardcore wise, but I like talking about cards and, like, card design philosophy and, like, the health of the overall game as a whole. I think this is going to move the game in a positive direction. And so I hope that continues to be the case, but we'll have to see. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.